Good afternoon and welcome to Cold Chain Connect. My name's Thomas Hunt, and this week I'm delighted to be joined by Athanasios Fourtounas, who is the trainer and facilitator of risk management and a principal workshops in Human Asset Group, assistant professor at the City College University of York campus, a crisis management expert, and gender issues expert and public speaker. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Thomas. I'm fine. Thank you for the invitation to speak at your podcast.
No problem. I was looking through your CV yesterday, and it's a long CV with plenty on there and some really interesting things in your early career around working with NATO, the Hellenic Army, and other things. And obviously, you've got a deep-rooted history around risk management in various areas. I was quite interested to start things off for the listeners to understand those early years and what you were doing there and how you came to actually your current role with the university and the work you're doing around teaching this topic.
In my military career, 30 years I was in the Hellenic Army and in various NATO positions. I saw that risk management is vital to what we do in our personal life and our business life, and especially in logistics, also in supply chain, because, risk is an uncertain event that has a probability of occurrence. And if it happens, it will have an impact, a positive one or a negative one. So you have to be proactive and actually to identify these positive or negative things and be prepared. So that's why during my military career and what I have experienced, I said I will go for that area. I want to study it more. I want then to teach it to other people.
Right. Okay. And when did you start teaching at the university itself? How long have you been doing that?
Well, I start my teaching in 2006 in
Hmm.
the military academy for NCOs of the Hellenic Army. And then I moved to the public sector while I was also a military officer. And I started the university teaching back in 2016 with the European campus of the University of York here
Hmm.
in Greece, Thessaloniki. And I think it is now 11 years that I'm teaching that topic. And not only at the university, of course, but with the human asset company in various sectors from hotel industry to military to medical sector. There are more than 25 sectors that we have taught or consult people in risk management and lesson learned.
Okay. When you look at risk management as a topic, obviously you're looking at hotel industry or looking at logistics or you're looking at various different areas like our business is manufacturing. Is there a universal system that you teach or is it very different for every industry that you're working with?
Usually, when we are doing that for knowledge and for consulting, we are using a combination of the PMI practices from United States and the PM squared methodology of the European Union. So it is a combination. But if someone wants to go for also a certification, personal certification, then it is only the PMI from United States which has that certification.
Right. Okay. And I first sort of noticed you when I was at Logipharma in Boston this year, and you were running a session, I think, with Demetrius Zaros, who's a supply chain manager at Amazon, and it was around stakeholder-centric strategies for human supply chain excellence. And I wasn't at the session, but I was really interested to understand what that was primarily about and what the findings were, because you're both very prominent people outside of our quite specific industry. And what was the sort of cross references that you were bringing in there?
Well, with Dimitrios, we know each other from the army. He is
What
also
was it?
a
Okay.
former military officer, and he was also a student of mine in risk management before 10 years. So we cooperated together to run for 1 hour this stakeholder management workshop
Mhm.
in order to present to the audience how you can effectively identify stakeholders, analyze them, and then find a way to engage them. Why?
Mhm.
Because not only in logistics, but in every sector, stakeholders is an ecosystem, okay, with many variables and factors that can influence them. So we gave them a scenario regarding a startup company because we wanted to get out of the mindset of to have a company and organization that is operating for a long time. And then we have identified with the audience a lot of stakeholders. And the ones that they had a lot of power, then we took them and we have created personas.
Mhm.
how you want your supplier to be, or how you want your client to be, or how you want your employee to be in a specific position, and then how you can interact with him.
Right. So when you say stakeholders, are you talking about a job title within the business, not a specific person? You're talking about a persona. Is that
Well,
correct?
when we say stakeholder at the beginning,
Mhm.
we are actually discussing who will influence your project, your mission, your company, or who is influenced by what you are doing.
Right.
So it can be in general, let's say our suppliers, or you can have a deep dive inside the suppliers and find the two, let's say, for example, that they are the most crucial ones because they are providing you raw materials. And if you cannot have these raw materials from them, then you have a problem.
Okay, interesting. And so when you look at temperature controlled logistics, and obviously you've been to conferences in this space and you understand it, what are the biggest risks in cold chain today? What are the things that you see when you talk to customers that come up time and time again as a risk factor in our industry?
A very interesting question. Yeah. I will repeat again the definition of a risk. Okay.
Please.
Risk is an uncertain event that has a probability of occurrence. And if it happens, it will have an impact on you or your company, etc. A positive impact or a negative impact. So actually, we see the two faces of a risk, opportunities and threats. Regarding the biggest risk in a cold chain today, I think I cannot name only one. I mean, we have a lot. For example, regarding opportunities, we have emerging technology or skilled personnel. On the other side, if we speak about threats, we have climate change, we have old critical infrastructure, or force majeure events. And
Hmm.
especially about the force majeure events, I'm not speaking only about floods, earthquakes, and all the forces of nature that influencing us, but in our era of perma-crisis, we can see also that we are influenced in the supply chain from conflicts, from riots and protests that they are closing routes or borders, or even from governmental restrictions.
Hmm.
So we don't have one, we have at least three or four, positive
Yeah.
or negative.
And the ones that you've mentioned, because for me, in temperature control, you've got sort of equipment failure is always there's sort of some obvious ones, are there? There's equipment failure, there's human error, there's environmental factors, there's power outages, there's data gaps. Those are kind of typically the ones that we would see. And in terms of the people you talk to in our sector, are the ones that they tend to talk about more? For example, you mentioned environmental impact. Is that becoming more of an issue as we go through the current climate, as we were?
It becomes more of an issue, but it is in our hand to keep it as a risk and lower down the probability or the impact of it. Because if you lose control of it, it will become an issue. And then you are getting to the crisis management. And even if you don't respond properly during the crisis management, you will now then step in the management of losses.
Hmm.
There, for certain you will lose, but you are trying to lose, let's say, less and less.
Yeah.
So we want to keep it in especially that one in the risk area and not become a crisis or even go to the management of losses.
Okay. And interesting you mentioned there that risk management is both positive and negative, because I think a lot of people's perceptions that it's a risk is a negative, it's always a
I know.
downside. How do you
Yeah.
handle that?
Well, it is the first thing that I'm teaching to my students that, do not translate because I have a multinational audience of students. Do not translate risk as a danger
Mm.
only. It is also an opportunity. And the essence of risk management is to respond properly to a threat so as to create an opportunity. And there are many hidden opportunities there. My way of lure them to the proper mindset is that whenever we have the scenario, as you see behind me, my class, whenever we have a scenario, I'm telling them start identifying first the opportunities.
Mhm.
Why? Because it is the most hard thing to do. But now that your mind is relaxed and you are not tired, try to identify them for an hour. And then we will go to the easy part to identify threats. Because yes, human mind is working that way. You try first to find the things that they can cause you a problem, but you have to hack it. Okay. And that's the only way,
Yeah.
or at least to play the devil's advocate. So I'm asking them, tell me how our supply chain or our project will go perfectly well. Do not think that it will fail. Think that it will go perfectly well. Describe me that
Mhm.
situation. And then we are identifying opportunities.
Yeah. And Are you talking about the opportunities as it's a risk to miss the opportunity? Like if you're looking at new technology or IoT or the stuff that's coming in the industry, you do need to look at the risk factors of not seeing the opportunities, as it were.
Not only that, but also how you can use them effectively, how you can integrate them inside your systems, inside your job, your supply chain, so as to have a positive impact. As I said before, it is an ecosystem.
Mm,
And it is a very good question that you made because it is actually a slide that I have in every presentation I make. And it is a slide saying that whenever you run a business, a supply chain, etc., it is an ecosystem of hardware, the machines you have, software, the processes you have, and
mhm,
humanware. The human factor that it is using the machines according to the processes you have so as to have a result.
mhm, mhm.
Because you know, every
Okay.
tool, every technique has a neutral role. It is up to you, the operator, let's say, how you use it, that it will influence the result, positive or negative.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you turn risk management for sort of always being reactive? Everyone's always reacting to an issue or anything else to being more proactive. What's the planning that you would teach in that and recommend for leaders in this space?
Yeah. Well, the first step to do that, to become proactive and not be reactive, is actually to decompose your supply chain or your project from the beginning to the end to simple activities and identify, of course, the stakeholders and the factors that can influence you. Then you have to plan proper responses. But this is not a one man show. You have to have a a team mindset, okay? Because you want to achieve situational awareness and optimize your processes. Risk management is not about managing risks. This is crisis management. Risk
Mhm.
management is about being proactive through enabling informed decisions to achieve your objectives. So you don't have to use or try to use again and again new tools. It is all about changing your mindset, like we discussed before. Companies actually must ask themselves, are we waiting for failures or we are actively preventing them?
Yes. Okay. And is there a process that you would teach and recommend that people follow in this, or how do they approach something like this as a structure within a team, business, wherever they are?
Well, as I said, it is a teamwork. And yes,
Mm,
there is a process. There are specific steps that you have to follow. It is not a linear approach, actually. It is an iterative approach. Okay.
mhm,
It is like a famous Arthur says that it is not a destination, it is a journey, risk management. So you see behind me from left to right that first you have to identify your stakeholders,
mhm,
then you have to create a risk management plan. So in that inside that risk management plan, you have to describe the next step, how you will identify the risks, what are the tools and techniques that you will use, how you will analyze them. You will use a PI matrix, probability and impact matrix, or a software for quantitative risk analysis. And then, of course, how you will plan your responses. And of course, how you will appoint risk owners and risk action owners by name for these risks.
okay, interesting. And you talked about, obviously we've gone to stakeholders, and I'm quite interested to know how different, say you have a stakeholder that's in place, how do you make sure that different stakeholders are aligned under the same strategy, vision going forward and on doing the same process?
Well, that's why it is also the first step of risk management, the stakeholder identification and analysis, because stakeholders in a cold chain are an ecosystem with numerous of correlations. So in order to keep them aligned requires clear shared goals, defined roles, continuous communication via platforms, for example, standardized training and regular performance reviews using KPIs. Why you need that? Well, you need that to ensure that everyone, from producers to logistics partners, understand their impact on the temperature integrity.
Mm,
And with the above, you can build strong coalitions that can respond effectively to challenges. So you have to have a structured way, as I said at the beginning, to
mm.
identify them, analyze them, and engage them.
And how do you do that? So if I have an internal stakeholder, obviously that's probably easier, but an external manufacturer or supplier, how would you approach that, especially if they're overseas?
Well, the simplest way is common trainings. We have now the means. especially after COVID. So do some common trainings, even e-learning trainings, so as you know, to have a better understanding of the two parts, also to have shared problems to discuss and find shared solutions. Training is also a very good mitigation response strategy in situations like, and of course, again, continuous and effective communication with proper communication plan.
Right, okay. Yeah. And when mistakes happen with stakeholders, what's the most common reason it breaks down or there's a problem?
It was also a discussion in Boston, that one. Well, the most common mistake is the lack of SOPs,
Right.
standardizing processes. Okay. That's why I told you before, you have to discuss with the ones that they are far away. And also the lack of the common training. And all these are connected with what? The human factor. Okay. So if you don't have a common training, if you don't have proper common SOPs, what it where it bringing to you is to a situation that you don't have a common way to monitor your supply chain or your cold chain, but also you cannot communicate properly and on time any disruption. And sometimes companies are not conducting that cross partner training. So they don't have a shared vision, shared goals. They don't have a unified understanding of the situation. For me, conferences like the one you mentioned, it has to be done once in a year or twice in order, people from all over the world to come there and discuss best practices, lesson learned, etc. And many people in Boston or in California where I'm going, they're asking me, what is happening in Europe? What are the challenges you have? What are the mistakes or the best practices?
Okay. And if you look at SOPs, how often should we be reviewing SOPs? How involved should we be with SOPs with external stakeholders? Because it is a key. I know we run, as I say, a manufacturing business, and SOPs for our suppliers are critical. But I don't know how you would recommend in this pharma sector how it's run.
Well, updating the SOPs, it is a part of what we call in monitor risks, the risk audit process. So for me, a best practice is every 4 to 6 months. Okay.
Right.
And you have to take that SOP and, discuss with the team that it is actually executing it. What were the good things or the bad things? What made your life easier or made your life hard? What you want us to change? So it is
Mhm.
a part of the monitor risk process. And in Greece, for example, in the clinic, in the medical sector, clinics, they have to have an updated risk management plan and risk management SOP. Otherwise, they cannot operate. And
Yeah.
that SOP is actually being audited every year by the state. Also, you have to update your SOP when a major event happens, COVID, for example, or something in the business world happens, for example, restrictions or a new medicine or new
Mm.
procedures.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Cultures, different cultures on this. When you've got different stakeholders and you've got different cultures around the world, we're a very global industry. How do you manage that? And does it have much impact when you have a good set procedure and process, or can it still go wrong?
Well, it is a huge thing, the cultural differences between stakeholders, especially when you run a global supply chain. So the cultural differences complicate the global cold chain or a simple supply chain in general by causing communication breakdowns or even conflicting business norms. You might have different ethical values with the other stakeholders. You can have also different perception about the risk or even a different risk attitude toward your business. A person can be a risk averse, doesn't like risks at all. Another one can be risk seeker, love to risk and he wants to save time. And others can be risk neutral at the middle. So all these things are influencing precise temperature control, timely delivery, which is
Mhm.
essential for perishable goods. And also what we have afterwards is chain bridges, which brings waste, mistrust, disruption. That's why, as I said before, companies have to invest in cross trainings and cultural training. And we have to have clear and agreed protocols and SOPs so as to bring inside that supply chain flexibility. From my experience in NATO, because I served almost 5 years in logistics position in NATO and more than 7 years in the Greek army, in NATO, that was a huge challenge. Imagine we were operating all over the world, 30 plus nations as partners, and we had a supply chain that was including not only food and medicine, but also humanitarian aid, weapon systems, ammunitions, that they were affected a lot by
Mhm.
high or low temperature. So the one thing that was very crucial were the SOPs, okay? In order, to take away the cultural differences, to have a common way of acting, communicating, and then actually planning for the future.
Yeah. Okay. And in temperature controlled logistics, who writes and sets the SOP? Who is the ultimately responsible person in your experience who should be doing that? Or what's the team makeup internally? Who should be involved?
You mean inside the company?
Yeah, yeah. If I'm a large farmer setting out a new strategy around risk, who's involved in those talks?
Well, the CEO has to give the lead. He has or she has to say that, first of all, this is the risk attitude that we will have, risk seeker, risk averse, or risk neutral. And then usually the PMO, the project management office of the unit of the company, they have to start write an SOP or a risk management plan according to the level of the company. And they, as I said, it is a teamwork. That means that everyone has participate from
Mhm.
every branch. They have to have a representative as well as from every level of hierarchy.
Right. And what's one risk principle that cold chains fail to apply on a regular basis that you've seen? What's the most common?
Well, the one key risk principle that often fail to apply is to have a proactive risk assessment for not technical non-technical failures. And for example, we said that before, inadequate staff training or poor handling of protocols, or even to rely on a substandard infrastructure and packing. That leads again to breaches, even if you have functional equipment inside your supply chain. And companies, they have to be careful. Personnel is the strongest or the weakest link in the chain, in the command chain or in the supply chain. So you don't have to focus only in technology, to invest only in technology. Many times we observe that companies, and I have observed it also, are investing a lot in sensors and high technology, but
Mhm.
they neglect training of staff on proper loading, uploading of materials, emergency procedures, etc. And the last mile delivery is influenced a lot by the human factor. So when you have the above situation, and just
Mhm.
imagine it, not following the protocols or not having protocols and SOPs, poor training of your personnel, bad communication, you are facing what we call in risk management the avalanche effect, which is small risks, small, low probability, and low impact risks, a lot of them happening at the same time or in a specific sequence, and then creating a huge one. So from the green area in that template behind me, you go straight to the red area and
Right.
you face a problem, what we call also emergent risk.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I can see that. So it's a lot of small errors through the supply chain create one large one that's catastrophic.
Yeah, that's why it's called chain.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah. Have you got any real world examples or something could bring it to life for the audience in terms of where risk management's kind of come in and saved the day, or it's had a really big impact for a client that you know of or you've worked with?
Yes, and it is one of my favorite books also. Can I say the name of the book?
Of course. Yeah, no
Okay.
problem.
So it is a book called Moving Mountains from retired General Gas Pagonis. It was a Greek American general of the US Army. And it speaks about how you can combine risk management with leadership and logistics by using the proper tools and a proactive mindset. That book speaks about the deployment of coalition forces in the first Gulf War in 90s, as well as how you can organize the reverse supply chain, which for me is more challenging. Okay. And just to tell you that he's the General Pagonis, that in 90s he managed something incredible and impossible. The coalition forces to have as a dessert every day ice cream inside the deserts. Be
Right.
careful during 90s.
Wow.
And of course for morale purposes. But
Yeah.
if you read that book, it speaks about the whole story, how they have planned the logistics from the beginning to move
Mhm.
from one continent to the other side of the world, 90s again, and how they ran everything there and how they went back. And also, you can find things that we already discussed about cultural differences, about stakeholder ecosystem, etc.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is a very interesting book. I have it next to me actually because I have three kids. So two of them are in the university, and
Yep.
I'm telling them it doesn't matter that we are studying electrical engineer or IT. You have to read that book because you will find things inside there that they can influence your mindset, the way you are making decisions, planning your future.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of learnings from stories like that or real world examples, and also in sort of great expeditions in the past, like Shackleton, or you look at Everest or the poles and the planning and everything around that. It's the same principles, I presume, in the corporate world now still apply. I mean, that's what you're sort of describing, isn't it?
Yeah, and General Gaspaionis, before that mission, he was working in the private sector. He was a reservist, so he was called to wear again a uniform and actually plan everything. So he
Right.
was a logistician in his private life in a company, but then he applied everything in the army world.
Yep.
He wrote SOPs, and then of course he went back to the private sector to give his experience.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and so if we move on to technology, specifically in terms of tech itself improving risk visibility for cold chains, or you look at things like IoT or blockchain, what's your view on this in terms of, does it remove risk? Does it create more complexity and more layers for people to have to deal with? In terms of your experience in this sort of, we've been swamped by so much technology in the last couple of years. Is it good or bad for risk?
Look, technology is always good. For me, as I said before, it is a tool, but it is a neutral one. How you use it affects the result. Okay.
Hmm.
That's for me one of the basic things that I'm teaching also to my students. Of course, technology enhances cold chain risk visibility by using Internet of Things, sensors, GPS, RFIDs, or even AI to have what? To have real time monitoring of the temperature, humidity, location, etc. It provides you with instant alerts for deviations, enables you to proactive response for sure, and using data analytics. But the human factor is very critical. Okay. You cannot rely only on technology. I had a professor in my university when I finished my military academy for my second bachelor who was telling us every time that technology is like a Trojan horse. You have to be careful because if you depend a lot or exclusively to technology and something will go wrong, like not having an internet, electricity, then you don't have any tools to work on. So for me, it's a good thing. You have to be careful how to use it. Again, SOPs, and I think also the digital twins is a very good thing because it can you can have predictive insights across the network. You can have simulations so as to achieve optimization. And with technology, one good thing is that you can collect a lot of data, and data are inputs for your lesson learned process, and then the lesson learned are a critical input for the risk management.
Yeah. We had a guest on actually last week, from Bosch Technical Services, who was talking about digital twins and how effective they are around risk. Yeah, he was talking about risk as well. And so I think that's good. There's also talking around AI having a good impact in analyzing data and picking out potential risks in the data that for the human eye is difficult to see. So there's some
Yeah.
good things there.
Yeah, but we have to avoid to become biased. Okay, we cannot rely on AI.
Mm.
Sometimes it's garbage in, garbage out. So you have to be more careful how you use it and or in which extent. And of course, again, to use human factor to have the final decision.
Yes, yes, and I think the human factor comes in a lot of logistics. Is the gap between the technology and the human being is often the weak spot, and we've had guests a lot talk around training and the need for more training because that's neglected, and it's something you've obviously mentioned today, which is quite interesting. It seems to be quite a common theme, actually. What would be the one piece of advice that you would want to impart on cold chain, temperature controlled leaders for 2026? If you're there listening in now, what would you want to say?
Well, I can say that your personnel is your most precious resource. So invest on your personnel to create the proper 360 culture and mindset. Okay. I mean, make some workshops, discuss with your personnel, train them properly, and of course to have 360 culture with your stakeholders. Okay, then you can embrace real-time visibility and data-driven action, and of course move beyond just keep records with data. Proactively use Internet of Things monitoring, telematics, etc., but also leave your personnel free to make suggestions, to raise their hand and speak up freely their concerns, etc. You know, one of the most famous words, F word, the most famous F word in English. You know what it is, and it is not
Go on.
with 4 letters.
Yeah, go on.
It's failure. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
why it's the failure one? Because with a failure, you can learn. You can learn that was not the correct way to achieve that and how you can do it better. So many companies are actually conducting in Europe in our days what we call fail fair. So they are gathered together at the end of the month, the end of the 3 month period, and they are discussing for a day in a very free environment what were the failures of these months, what we did wrong, and how we can fix it so as not to have the same mistakes again.
Yes. Okay. Great. I think we're running out of time, so we've covered a lot of ground there, and I really appreciate you coming on. It's a different angle in terms of what we cover on the podcast normally, but it's so important in terms of a topic. So I think it's going to be really well received. If people want to find you, if they want to engage with you, what's the best way of them doing that?
Well, you can find me in the LinkedIn, and there
Okay.
you have all my contact details, my email, my phone with the business one with WhatsApp and Viber. I'm happy to help companies or people, consult companies, teach companies, or just give them my opinion, etc. And if I can say something
Of course.
at the end, as I said, I was 30 years in the army, and what we have as a motto, it's called, it is from Omer, the Omiros in Greek language. There is two words that Omer said, which is also depicted on the Hellenic army sign, which
Mhm.
says in ancient Greek, in Aristevin. In modern Greek means Aristia. So that thing means that every day you have to try to be better. Not to be the best, because you cannot be the best, the number one all the time. Okay, you will get burned. But every day you have to become better and better. So for me, that's a crucial step. If you have 360 uh, degrees mindset and you have this mindset, the excellence mindset in your culture, then you can have the proper supply chain, you can have your proper SOPs, and your personnel will help you a lot.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I absolutely agree. So very good. Great. Well, as I say, we're out of time now. So you've been listening to Cold Chain Connect with Athanasios Fourtounas.
That's
And my name's Thomas Hunt. Next week, tune in because we have a number of new guests coming on. So we look forward to seeing you all then. See you soon.